Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our last webinar of our December webinar series, The Tapestry of Our Seasons. Today's session is titled Supporting Loved Ones in Rocky Marriages, Navigating Challenges During the Holiday Season. And we are so glad that you're here with us tonight. Throughout the event, we encourage you to share your thoughts or questions in the chat box. We'll be addressing as many as possible during our Q&A session, so don't hesitate to contribute. We're really looking forward to hearing from you and making this an interactive experience. And before we dive into tonight's conversation, it is my much honor to introduce our esteemed speaker, Roy Kim. Roy is a former pastor, now a licensed MFT and certified sex addiction therapist with a focus on sexual addiction, betrayal trauma, and divorce healing. He works globally with churches and uses podcasting to help Asian American Christians embrace authenticity without shame. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Roy as he shares much needed insight tonight. Thank you so much, Roy.
Thanks so much. It's so good to be here. And I'm curious where you all are joining this webinar from. I mean, if you could type in the chat, like what city you are currently in, that'd be really cool. Oh, yes. Yes. Oh, oh my goodness. That's wonderful. Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for letting us know. I this topic is near and dear to my heart, and I'm guessing that a lot of you are joining this because you do have a loved one that you are concerned about. Um, and it's a heavy topic for sure. And I hope that, at the very least, what we take away from uh, tonight is that um, you can have some sort of idea of maybe one way that you can support a loved one who's going through something really, really horrible at this moment, especially with the holidays coming up. um, there are many types of uh, marital crises, and the one that I'm most familiar with in my clinical work is infidelity and some sort of problematic sexual behavior. It really does create havoc for a marriage. Sometimes the marriage can make it, they can repair, and sometimes they cannot. And I have less familiarity with other types of marital crisis, such as maybe domestic violence, or maybe there's a real horrible gambling issue or other types of behaviors that would cause a marital crisis. And in that case, I may need to learn from you in terms of how you are seeing things, how you are experiencing, or your loved one is experiencing something. Hopefully, we can all learn from one another. And I just want to bring to your consciousness um, the darkness and the heaviness of these types of situations. But I also want to plant in your minds and in your hearts that there's a reality where you can uh, be instrumental to this loved one's healing journey and just in some significant way, right? So if you don't mind going to the first slide, I want to share with you briefly my own holiday trauma story. This was back in 2009, where I experienced relational trauma and existential crisis because of my relationship with my then wife. Um, I found out that year that she had been unfaithful in both emotional ways and in sexual ways. And it was uh, a time for me to question everything that I knew about reality. I questioned um, what was happening. I couldn't quite make sense of what was up or down, right or wrong. And I questioned my own identity. I questioned who God was. It was a real bleak time in my life. And the discovery of that um, was approaching the holidays. And I remember having to, I wasn't quite ready to talk about what I was going through. And so um, when I remember having to have a meal with my in-laws, and my ex-wife was there at the time. And I remember feeling like there was this heaviness in the air, and her parents had no idea what was going on. And so I wasn't quite ready to share anything, but I was just really angry and passive aggressive, and she was as well towards me. And I remember her mother like scolding us at the restaurant. How dare you like behave like this in front of us as the parents? And so I had nothing to say other than, you know, I'm sorry, and it was just a horrible way to feel muzzled um, in this cultural vortex. And I remember having to uh, lie to my parents. They called me sometime in early December, and my mom was asking me what I was doing that day, and I really was doing nothing. I was just depressed, but I was just saying that I was thinking about doing some holiday shopping, which was not true. And again, I was not ready to tell them yet what I was going through. I had to kind of sort through my thoughts and my own soul, really. So just having to lie to them on the phone was such a um, just felt horrible, needing to do that. But I felt like I needed to do that for my own sanity. Um, I numbed myself out with just cigarettes and alcohol and other things just to kind of feel like I needed to escape and to medicate. And finally, after about 1 month of holding on to the secret, um, I, I told my parents, can we meet at this one, Chinese hole-in-wall restaurant? We met on Christmas, uh, 11 o'clock a.m. And I told them, yeah, she's not going to be coming with me. I'm coming alone. And so they knew instantly that something was off. And so they said, okay, let's meet there. And I remember just sitting there telling them the entire thing, like in tears. And thankfully they were, I mean, obviously they were in shock and they were enraged, but they held it together and they were able to just hear me out and be of support to me. And that was my holiday. That was 2009 for me. And if you don't mind going to the next slide, um, I looking back, I was so fortunate to have them who supported me. I had a best friend who checked in on me pretty regularly. I was in grad school at the time with a cohort of therapist students. Can you imagine, 30 people who were there because they either naturally had empathy or they were, trying to learn empathy from professionals and professors who also were teaching about mental health and empathy, things like that. Like I confided in them. They were like this cocoon for me during that time. And I had my therapist as well. So I had these saving graces during that time. And um, it was a lifeline for me. Um, but I also know that not every person who goes through marital crisis uh, has the supports that I did. Every situation is unique. Every person is unique. How we respond to things is unique. And not everyone confides in someone that they feel like they can trust. Not everyone has a support system. And so you may have a loved one who is in that boat. Um, and that can present some big challenges in the sense of like their their problem, their crisis may not be solved anytime soon. But if I can impart one word of advice is that you are not in a role to solve their problem. You know, you're in a role to be of support to them. And sometimes it takes everything within you to try not to be the fixer, but that is you'll probably do more good when you accept your role as someone who cannot fix what they're going through, but you're there to kind of be there as a support beam for them to lean on. Next slide, please. So these are a few of the common holiday stressors that align with what I went through, but also, you know, in my talks with a lot of folks who are going through crisis, these are what they're going through as well. Some of them are really trying to not let people know what's going on until maybe they feel ready to share with them, and they're still sorting out like when will I feel ready and who should I tell and why. So that is a gigantic secret to keep. Sometimes they're trying to keep the secret from their children, whether they're small children or adult children, but you know those are gigantic secrets to keep. They may keep it from their siblings, their own parents, people from church, people at their workplace. So um, if you ever had to keep a gigantic secret, you know what a burden that is. Sometimes they're also trying not to overshadow Jesus's birth. I mean, that's they feel like um, oh, you know, what's wrong with me? How can I compare what I'm going through with the fact that Jesus saved me? You know, so that's pretty stiff competition, not to overshadow Jesus's birth, or for those who aren't Christian, you know, just kind of like the holiday festivities. This should be a happy time, so try not to smother that, and then also try not to be an emotional burden to other people. So when you combine these, you can see how much internal pressure someone could feel. I'm just wondering, for those of you who already have kind of a ready answer, like what other examples of holiday pressure can you think of that some people in marital crisis might face? And I gave a few kind of broad categories of this, but I'm just curious in the chat if you guys can think of something, um, some sort of example of holiday pressure other than the ones that I mentioned. Yes, being at best behavior, right? Um, uh, yeah, where do we come up with that framework? You know, like where does that come from? It's just too much pressure. Thank you for contributing that. Oh my goodness, yes. Coping with the loss of how celebration used to be. Thank you for sharing that one. Yeah, in fact, I've had several conversations with people about that very topic, and they're really lamenting um, traditions that are dear to them, and you know, especially if the tradition is done as a whole family unit, and they feel like I can't do that anymore with the spouse and with the kids and everything. It's a big loss. Yeah. Yeah. So these are if you have more ideas, please put them into the chat. Um, and we can kind of circle back to those. Um, can we go to the next slide, please? I think that um, this is a lost art sometimes, but just the art of asking questions. The best way I think to know how to help someone is to ask them, how can I help you? So, asking it eliminates the guesswork, right? Can you think about, try to imagine like, oh, I wonder whether this would help them or whatever. But then what if I try this and it doesn't help out? And then what if it blows up in my face? Yeah, like that kind of anxiety can paralyze you from acting. But if you ask them, then it will eliminate some of that anxiety. Um, Merely asking, it communicates to them that you care for them, that you are thinking about them, that they are on your mind. And sometimes if you ask them, but they are either like a internal processor, they need some time to think about it, or they're kind of the person who instinctively says no or no thank you. But that's just kind of like that's their habit. But maybe given some more time, they actually might think of something. Just honor their resistance. Don't take it personally if they say, no, that's okay. And you can let them know that you'll check back in maybe in a few days or maybe next week. Or you can let them know that um, if they do think of something, just let you know. And you could just honor even the silence. So I do encourage you to ask. And I know that to that end, sometimes you don't know, like, oh, like what are some questions I can ask? So if you go to the next slide, these are some questions to get started, right? You can ask the person, hey, how are you feeling about the holidays? And just be curious. Um, because you might assume one way about them, but their answer might surprise you. So just being able to ask them how they're feeling about the holidays. Sometimes you can tell that they may say one thing, but their body language says something else, or their tone says something else. So depending on how close you are with them, you can say, I don't know whether your body language is saying the same thing that your words are, but you know, not to embarrass them or anything, but just to kind of let them know that you're kind of noticing that. You can ask them, um, so this dinner function that you have with your extended family or this work party or whatever, does anybody know what's going on between you and your spouse? Um, and some of them might say, yeah, they all know. Um, and then you can ask them like, how is that going to go? How do you feel being in that situation? Or if they say nobody knows, um, yeah, you can ask them what, um, how's that going to be for you? Like, is that going to be hard for you to just sort of keep your mouth shut? What are some of the typical questions that they're going to ask you that make you feel uncomfortable? Just letting them know that you're kind of thinking through those situations with them and seeing what they're seeing and feeling what they're feeling. You can ask them just straight up, is there anything that I can do to help you? Um, this next, this next question, do you need me to speak on your behalf? What I mean by that one is, so I've had some conversations with some clients who um, they they would tell me sometimes like they really wish that their sister or their mother or their aunt would step up um, on behalf of them and say to the larger family, like, um, oh, so and so, like my client, so and so can't make it. um, uh, they're not feeling very well, and um, you know, let's not pressure them to come. In fact, let's try to be understanding, and let's try to um, show love to them, right? So having someone who can serve as an advocate um, can um, can be helpful, especially for any of you who have like whether it's like a child who is going through a marital crisis, or maybe it's your cousin, and you just want to advocate for the voiceless. That could be something you can think about. But again, you want to be able to ask this person if that's what they wish that you can do for them, right? So you don't want to overstep. Would it help if we had a scheduled check-in or a text during your party? So for example, let's say they had a Christmas Eve get together, and they're going to feel really horrible, and they're keeping secrets during that whole time, and how miserable it is to be in that position for 3 hours. Does that person need a quick break to maybe go to the backyard or go to the bathroom and get a text from you just saying, "Hey, I'm thinking about you. Um, how's it going? Like, give me a quick update. Like, or is it as bad as you predicted? Is it even worse than what we thought about? Is it better than what you thought about?" Just anything that lets them know that they at least have someone who's with them in spirit, right? You can kind of think about, okay, let's do it on the hour. At every hour, I'm gonna take a break from my dinner as well, and I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'm going to check in with you, and you can text me back. So something like that could be something that you plan. um, you can say, like, let's say the person refuses to go to a holiday gathering because it's just too much, like their mental health is it's too impacted by the thought of going to that gathering, and they're going to be spending the holidays alone. You can ask them if they want to join your gathering and be in a safe place. Or do you want to do something with me the day after, like on the 26th? Do you want to do something with me or our family the next week afterwards? Um, we can make that the true holiday gathering, and the one that you're going through where you have to keep secrets is maybe um, you know the um, the bad version of the holidays. But you can look forward to the one where you're going to feel like at home with me and with us. These are just a few questions. And again, if you have some other questions that you'd like to share, we can think about more to add to the list. You can put them into the chat. Yeah, if they have kids, wow, can I watch your kids that you can take some time to yourself? I really, really love that. Yeah, so good. So good. Yeah. Any others? Hmm. Yeah, thanks for your words. Thank you, Susan. If there are some questions that you want to add to it, please share the wealth so that we can add them to this list. Um, Next slide, please. So this is a picture of me in 2009. No, 2010 January. So it's basically right after the holiday. Um, my one of my best friends, he and I decided that we were going to get away. So we decided to go to cheery Seattle and Vancouver. Yeah, it's gray anyway, like pretty much all year, but then in the wintertime it's even more so. But we both like that place, and so we decided to do a trip there. And I was it was the trip that I didn't know that I needed, and it was a chance for me to, you know how like you think, oh, I don't want to be a burden to someone. What if I call them, they're at work, or what if I text them right now, but they're busy? And this was a concentrated time of maybe 3 days, I think, that we were up there, 3 to 4 days, where I'm with him 24/7. And he's just giving me the space to be a support beam for me. And he had zero expectations for me to be like kind of tuning into what he's going through and whatever. Like this was strictly for him to be accompanying me on a getaway so that I can just be. And um, I was downcast, uh, filled with rage. I was horrified and terrified. I just felt heard. I felt loved by him. Um, this was a very like kind of this old man looking bar that we went to, and we had some whiskeys there, and just hours, hours to just be and to process and to decompress. And um, I can't tell you how meaningful this trip was for me. And um, not everyone may have the same, impact if you were to invite someone to go on a trip with you, but for some it may, and maybe even more so. If you just show the next slide, please. Um, this is also me on that same trip. We rode this barge or this what do you call it? A ferry, I think, to this one island, and that's Seattle in the background, and just um man, just this, you could just tell from my body language, like I was just lost in my own head, and being out there with the sea air and him giving me space to just be by myself, and then circling back and just sitting with him and sitting on the boat, talking, going, getting the rental car and driving around the islands and just talking some more. And there were some um, racist encounters that we also experienced on the islands, which is for another time. But yeah, I just remember this being such a meaningful trip for me. So I just want to share that this is something that um, didn't solve my problem by any means, but just the support that you feel from someone who's in the know is more important than you might think. And so it was a real part of my healing journey just to be able to just get away. Next slide. And this is the last point that I want to make before I open up for Q&A, that your show of love is significant. And so really think about what your strengths are and use them. Are you generous? Do you want to like give them like a DoorDash gift card that they can use? Are you into are you into alcohol? Do you want to kind of open up a really expensive bottle of alcohol? Again, not to necessarily get hammered, but just to enjoy something precious together and let them know that I'm thinking about you in this way. And um, are you more of like a touch giver? Do you want to just show your affection and your care through your hug and through sitting with them and crying with them? Quality time, like walking in the park with them. Acts of service. Do they need some housework? Migam earlier talked about, can I watch the kids for you? Um, uh, Hot chocolate together, watching some horrible movie together and just drinking hot chocolate. The list goes on. Just think about what is your natural way of showing love, can you extend that to them, by asking them if they would want that? Um, and also thinking about what is your loved one's way of feeling loved. Can you target that this holiday and let them know that you are really thinking about them, and and kind of allowing your strengths to converge in a way that feels really meaningful to them. Yeah, like my last slide is just like ways for you to reach out to me. Yeah, you can reach out to me on social media or through my email or website. But I just want to open it up to questions, and also if um, maybe we can take a look at some of the things that came up in the chat.
Oh, thank you so, so much, Roy. We really appreciate your vulnerability sharing with us tonight. We do have a couple of more questions, but I also think going through the chat would be great too. The first question that we have here is, what are some coping mechanisms to deal with feelings of shame, guilt, or betrayal when surrounded by holiday cheer?
Oh, yeah. Um, yeah. I just feel like um, we have to give ourselves permission to not be um, fenced in by the timeline of the year. You know what I'm saying? Like Christmas falling on the day that it is, and Valentine's Day falling, or a birthday falling on the day that it is. Like we have no power over that. Um, so in a way, I think, as much as possible, we extract ourselves from those types of man-made boundaries. Sorry, not man-made boundaries. Just the fact that those well, the holidays are man-made, but time is not. And the fact that these holidays fall on that timeline, like we can do nothing about that. Um, so if the shame and the guilt and the if that is if that is made worse by the fact that there's holiday cheer around us, like we have to put in some energy to try to feel like, or try to um, think that our what we're going through in our heart can't be governed by what's going on around us with the holiday or the calendar. But I think when it comes to the just the shame and the guilt and the betrayal um, in a vacuum, how do you deal with that? Um, I think you have to think about how long it takes to heal from this. Um, in When I speak to some of my clients, I let them know that you're embarking on a journey that may take about 3 years, if not longer, depending on how invested, how close the relationship was, how the experience of betrayal. But we're thinking about a multiple year journey of healing that can't be accelerated so that you feel fine within a few weeks. It's just unreasonable to think that way. So to allow yourself to feel um, all the emotions that are related to this level of betrayal, or whatever, again, whatever the crisis, the reason for the crisis is, that allowing your allowing yourself to feel what's actually real about the situation is probably the most mentally healthy thing that you can do. And that's why it just feels like craziness sometimes to suppress that during a 3 hour holiday dinner. Like when everything within you is saying that the world doesn't make sense and that I have a bleak future and I can't stand this person that I came here with at this dinner party. To suppress that is just is madness, right? So you have to find ways, whether it's talking to your therapist or to your support team, like to allow yourself to feel things, um, and not suppress them. And that does mean that you need to excuse yourself if you can from a holiday dinner because you just can't suppress it. Then maybe you can feel empowered to do that, or you can, let your loved one know that you can do that. But again, you can't force them to do so. So the coping mechanisms are, I mean, I know what my coping mechanisms were. It was self-medication. And I think people do that, um, to some degree. But as far as how to deal with the betrayal itself and all the feelings that come with it, the sad truth is we have to feel it. We have to feel it very, very acutely, probably for a long time. And but hopefully we have people to feel it with, that we're like that, these support beams that I was referring to. We need to be able to feel it and then kind of learn how to heal from it over time.
Oh, wow.
Great question.
Yeah, it's a great question. And thank you, Roy, for sharing your insight with us. I believe you mentioned this briefly, and we see a lot of suggestions from the group chat as well.
Mhm.
But second question is how to help marriages as an outsider.
Um, the um, Even as a therapist, so even though I'm a marriage and family therapist, I don't really see a whole lot of couples. My friend and colleague Nigam knows this very well. I don't like seeing couples. It's just um, uh, that's why I refer people to her. um, but even as a therapist, um, there are limits as to what we can do to help a marriage because the two primary agents of the marriage are the two partners in the marriage. Like they are the executive decision makers that can lead towards healing, lead towards thriving, or lead towards devolving. So um, the therapist even can only do so much to ask questions, to do some coaching, but ultimately they're the ones who are going to be executing or not executing according to like their will. So I think for a friend or a loved one or a family member, um, we can provide things that maybe a therapist can't provide. Um, but if even a therapist is limited in how they can help the marriage, and the therapist is the one who has a lot of training in how to help people, like guiding them towards a healthy marriage, then I think it's safe to assume that a loved one who does not have that background and that level of training is going to feel even more limited. And that's okay. Um, I think, again, there's an art of accepting limitations and reality that we need to practice for ourselves. And um, rather than having the idea of being a helper of that person's marriage, it's someone who is um, loving them through their marriage or through their marital crisis. How do I love them? How do I support them? How do I um, listen and care, um, but not be a problem solver? Because the ones who can solve the problem are the two people in the marriage. So hopefully that kind of provides some structures, structural framework for you to think about yourself as an outsider.
Thank you. And the third question is it better for couples to address the issue openly during family holidays or focus on maintaining peace and revisit the issue later?
Um, Personally, um, I always think it's better to address it um, head on, but I know that um, I have I have the luxury and the privilege of having family members who are um, willing to hear what I'm going through and to accommodate. Not everyone has that kind of privilege. So I don't want to make a universal statement about that because I want to be sensitive to people's experience of their family culture. Um, if it's possible, then yes, I would definitely advise, or I would advocate for people to address it openly. Um, as I'm reading this question, I'm reading it not that they're doing it openly with their family members, but they're openly amongst themselves, or with a therapist, and then kind of saying like, family members, please excuse us as we don't participate this time around, and maybe we'll kind of, when things get a little bit more uh, uh, when there's a bit more equilibrium, maybe we can have a delayed holiday time with you guys. But for right now, there's some really um, dire things to address that we need to do so. I would advocate for that. Um, but again, if there are some situations where excusing yourself from the family party or whatever like would cause even more mental strain or whatever, then that's where I think plan B would be, okay, we're gonna go, we're gonna join this thing, but maybe we each need some sort of support on the outside, such as a check-in text from a friend or something else that makes us feel like we can get through this holiday season intact, So um, I don't have a one size fits all answer to that question, but I think we need to be somewhat um, uh, flexible in the way that we conceptualize it.
We appreciate that, Roy. Thank you. This may be the last question, which is thank you for the presentation and your vulnerability. I am supporting a client and was wondering what kind of support from a therapist has been most helpful.
It's actually very similar to some of the main points that I shared before from a loved one, and that is, um, does the therapist ask questions that really explore what that client's experience is, or maybe, so like, if it's a first time, like, how do I phrase this? Like, the client is going to have some idea of how these holiday things go from the past. And so now thinking about this upcoming thing, the therapist can invite the client to talk about how the previous holiday things go and kind of explore what it would feel like to be in that same kind of environment given now this new situation, and um, how they would feel participating in that, asking them cultural questions like, is it even an option to not go? If you didn't go, what would you do instead? um, I think just being able to think through the world of this client and what they're capable of doing, um, whether they need some uh, brainstorming sessions, strategizing about what they can do if they feel like they are required to go. Are there people that you can contact to get some needed support during this time? Just thinking of ways that the client can feel empowered. But again, it's not like the crisis is going to go away anytime soon. That may be a long road for them, but at least during this time, can they feel somewhat empowered, um, and can they um, can they exercise um, their own voice in maybe asking a friend for some kind of help or asking a sister or a brother for some kind of help during this time. This could actually be very new for them. And in that case, there's some real reasons to celebrate because um, they're they're acting and behaving and deciding things in a way um, that they haven't before in a good way. And maybe this crisis is kind of bringing out that kind of empowerment for them. So this could be somewhat of a catalyst for them, perhaps for the rest of their life. So I just feel like being able to support your client just involves that kind of exploration and wondering out loud and seeing whether your theory resonates with them. And if not, then they can kind of teach you what their experience is and what their fears are and brainstorming together in a way that feels like it's empowering for the client.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Roy. And thank you again for making this space feel like a safe space because through your stories, it really definitely kind of encouraged us to share more vulnerably.
Mm.
As much as I would like to hear more, like a lot of us here, are there any other like final words that you'd like to share? Because we have about 5 more minutes left.
Yeah, and were there some other like questions or other comments like related to that earlier slide about questions that you can think of to ask the loved one or other ideas?
Yeah, maybe we can type it in or look back to the prior comments in the chat box.
Oh, do you want to join our runners club? Oh, I don't run, but for runners, for people who like running, it must be nice. What do you feel like eating? Oh, let me cook for you. Oh, I like that. Can I gift you a therapy session?
Mhm.
Oh, do you want to go to a batting cage? Scream into pillows together or go to one of those break things places? Yes, axe throwing, right? uh, Koreans might want to do archery. These are really good.
Mhm.
I'm also wondering, as you think about a loved one who is going through something like this, just can you put in the chat, like, how do you feel? You know, like, what do you feel inside as you think about their situation and is it like helpless? Um, does it feel um, bleak? Um, yeah, I'm wondering how you guys are doing as you are a witness to what they're going through. Yeah. Helpless, unsure of what next steps. Am I saying the right things? Am I doing the right things? Trying not to take their nose personally. Not sure how much I should try to support versus respect and give them their space. Really good. Yeah. My friend who I went to Seattle and Vancouver with, um, he's not someone of many words. um, and but he's a man of many uh, sighs, hansum. Just I would say certain things, and he'd be like, and he'd fill up my whiskey glass, and just have another, clink glasses with me, and that was enough. You know, it was enough for me to know that we both didn't know the answer, and he was on my side, and he understood, and he did not reject me, and that he would stay by my side, whether it's physically by my side or in spirit by my side. Um, so sometimes not knowing what to do or what to say is maybe not as important as just you letting your allegiance show. You know what I'm saying? Like whatever is your natural way of showing your allegiance, you know, I think that's just, mm, I think your friend, depending on how well you know each other or your loved one, they'll get it. Um, and a lot of times they're probably not looking for you either to give advice or whatever, but um, just show them like, man, if they are feeling um, lost and confused, you are feeling lost and confused. If they're feeling rageful, you're feeling rageful. If they're feeling really, really sad, that you're feeling really sad. So, um, yeah, in the psychology world, there's such a thing as, mirroring, where how the other person is kind of feeling something, you're kind of matching that. I think that's what a friend does, I think, as you really listen and care for them in that way. So I wouldn't worry so much about doing the right thing, but rather just making sure that you can just stay really connected to them.
Oh, thank you, Roy. There are two more questions just came up, and I think we love to kind of ask you before we end, which are there practices to help manage the anxieties that are projected onto us from our loved ones who are experiencing this hardship, and also how not to convey an attitude, looking not, or a look of pity?
Yeah. As far as the first one is concerned, um, I mean, even as a therapist, I can feel the person's energy, and I have to manage my own stuff as well. It's not something that comes naturally a lot. It's just something that gets better with practice. So, I mean, um, I kind of check in with my gut. Sometimes I just kind of take a deep breath and try to, regulate my own nervous system and regulate my own thoughts, and just kind of reminding myself I'm here to be a support beam, um, and whatever's coming up within me, whether it's the anxiety of like, oh, I don't like conflict, or I don't like things that are messy and whatever, like, sometimes those are things that you can regulate with just breathing exercises, or with, some sort of mental or cognitive exercises, doing something that you enjoy, that that kind of gets your mind off of things, such as taking your dog for a walk or whatever. Or if you have your own therapist to talk through that with them, and figure out some tools to continually remind yourself that um, this person's situation is not your situation. You care for it, but you're not in that person's situation. So kind of creating some type of distance or differentiation would be helpful, but there's no real quick fix for that or quick practice that is a one size fits all. I think it's going to be a matter of you figuring out how to identify when you're taking on that person's stuff, and then maybe again with the help of your own therapist to think through ways to regulate yourself. But breathing exercises as a universal tool it helps a lot of people just to kind of realize, oh, I'm not breathing. I need to get more oxygen into my system to feel more regulated. And as far as like the pity is concerned, it's a tough one because sometimes what we're actually feeling is empathy for the person, but then maybe our facial expression, they're interpreting that as pity, and that may be triggering for them because of their own stuff. So I don't know. Would that require a kind of a conversation with them that lets them know that I hope I'm not conveying pity, but rather just love and sorrow and mirroring. I don't know. It might require a clarifying conversation with them so that the next time you show that same look, they're not interpreting that as pity towards them, but it's they're interpreting that as your form of love.
Thank you so much, Roy, and thank you everyone for all the great questions. Yeah, I know the time is already 9:01 Eastern Time. On behalf of MSG, I would like to extend deepest heartfelt gratitude to our incredible speaker, Roy. Roy, I think this was such a needed and timely topic that you shared with us today. And thank you. Now, I'd like to introduce several resources for you to explore before we end the meeting. On our website, we have an online directory for Korean American mental health professionals across the nation. So you can select the state and browse Korean American mental health professionals based on your state. And also, we have reports and bilingual blog posts. Whether you're seeking personal journeys, tips on finding the right therapist, or more, our blogs offer a wealth of resources. And we have an incredible podcast, Research Sense. The podcast caters to professionals and lay people, even to those who are simply curious about research as well. And last but not least, we like to talk about giving. Your generosity can make us make a real difference. By donating to our cause, you'll help us continue providing vital resources and support Korean American individuals. Each contribution, no matter the size, helps us break down barriers and ensure that mental wellness is within reach for all. And once again, we extend our heartfelt gratitude to everyone who joined us this Wednesday evening. We hope the rest of your week and the night is as comforting as our time together. Thank you once again. And thank you again, Roy, so much. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.